Hey, folks. Today, we figured with Manuel that we'll record an episode that we bonded over after last video, because if you have a PhD in engineering, you kind of have this vibe that it's something you really want to talk about. And we figured that maybe some of you might think, is it a good idea to do a PhD in engineering? And we'll just talk about it. So as you can already guess, both me and Manuel actually achieved this, and we decided to share our perspective. So I will start with saying that I come from Poland and Manuel is from Germany, so our experience, while might be a bit different, we are definitely from Europe, so they will be similar at the same time. And I don't know if the same would hold for people in US, for instance, but I'm pretty certain that it's a rather unifying experience. So you can let us know in the comments if you agree. So I will kill Manuel with the first question. And that is, why would you even do a PhD in engineering?
Yeah, that's a question you ask yourself more on the end, having a PhD, than at the beginning, because yeah, well, at least for me, this was the case, because I wanted to become, in an earlier part of my life, I wanted to become a professor. So, and for a professor, you have to have a PhD, right? So easy thing for me, and then you have all the ideals, and the PhD knows everything and whatever. And having achieved this PhD, it becomes more a question, why did you even start? It was definitely not a list of pros and cons where I sat down and thought about it and come to the conclusion, all right, I will achieve or follow to achieve a PhD. But it was more or less a thing which was set with my career choice of ultimately having the wish to become a professor. So this was the reason why I initially followed this path. Yeah.
So my path was a bit different. My father has a PhD in engineering. So if you would ask me in 8th grade of primary school what I will do, I would tell you I will go to university, do a PhD and start a company. I knew it from the beginning. So here in Poland, when you want to start a PhD, there is a professors committee that you go in front of, and they ask you questions. Technically it is to assess whether you're I don't know, good enough in some sense, but more or less they want to just let to know you, so they know what kind of person you are. And the professor who taught statics look at me and say boy, why do you even want to do a PhD? Which was such a smart question, but you realize it so much later.
Yes.
And I looked him in the face and said, I cannot imagine my life without one. And he was like, yep, we don't have any more questions. You can go.
All right.
So I guess that to me, it was a very natural choice. But then I think that Manuel did a trick, and I followed on this trick. And that is, we say why we did our PhDs, but we can also tell you, or at least try to tell you, why would you really want to have a PhD in engineering? Because apparently it's not necessarily, people rarely start a PhD and finish a PhD with the same set of motivation. So
yeah,
maybe we should talk a bit about why would you actually want to have a PhD practically for your career, let's say?
Yeah, so there are definitely pros for it. I think the most important one is that certain career choices at a certain level will require you to have a PhD. So if
but
you
that's
ever
mostly academic, right?
Not so much here. So if you want to, no, it's also, let's say if you want to have a job as a engineer at Porsche or Mercedes-Benz, right? You can apply for a engineering job, right? You without a PhD, and if you're good, you get the job. You can also progress in your career and maybe become a team lead. But on a certain level, let's say the density of PhDs becomes ultimately high. And above a certain level, they're just PhDs.
Oh,
Reasoning
okay.
behind this is not always, at least to my knowing, it's not because they're better in terms of their expertise, which they also accumulated with doing their PhD, but more or less because they should reflect the company better. On a higher level, you should have a higher degree, and it's more or
Okay.
less of a prestige thing. And and even on smaller companies, the CEO or someone in this position will have a higher probability of having a PhD, as you are.
I won't protest that.
Yeah, so this is one of the main advantages of having a PhD, because your career paths are different to a normal engineer, because I almost said wasting, but you're using a larger amount of time where you don't make much money, but then you can go or extend your career ladder a little bit wider, or it's a different path for you, which cannot be followed with non-PhDs. So this is more or less a ultimate advantage of having a PhD, and the reason why you're doing that altogether.
Wow. Like,
Yeah.
I can honestly tell you, I had nothing of this sort in mind when I was doing my PhD.
Really?
No, seriously, like it came to me later, because it's so interesting that the first thing you've mentioned with having a PhD is like a big corporation, like big engineering company that does those incredible things. And like this path of career never appeared to me. It like a single day, I wasn't thinking something like, yeah, I will do a PhD and be like a manager in Porsche. It wouldn't occur to me. And to be fair, if I would be speaking first, I was actually going to say that this won't help you at all. But frankly, when you said that, but at some level it helps, I was like, I actually don't know. And maybe that's a fact, because I actually do corporate training. And as I think of it, in the best companies, the engineering teams usually are led by a PhD. And some of the team members are like PhD researchers. So that's definitely, like, there's definitely something there. And so it seems that PhD just, got a bit better in my eyes because I wasn't thinking about it. Like, to be fair, my thought of becoming a PhD was that I wanted to be a teacher. Literally, like, that was like, if I would have to name one motivation, I didn't want to be a scientist. I never I'm a crazy inventor, let's say. Like, I like stupid, weird ideas you can do something with, but I don't like rigorous, repetitive work of let's do this 3,000 times and do statistics on outcomes. Like, I'm not like, nope, that's not. This is not how I roll. So being a researcher was never interesting of me, but to become like a decent academic teacher, you actually need to have a PhD. So if you would ask me as a PhD researcher, why are you doing this? If I would want to be polite, I would say that I want to become a lecturer, not even a professor, but a lecturer in general. And I actually taught at university for 10 years. So let's say that, mission accomplished. I can high five myself. But the reality is that inside I knew that I was doing a PhD to have a company. And, like, I knew that I will always have a small company. I don't have I don't even want to build it into like this huge corporation. Like, regardless if I could or not, that's absolutely not my goal, and I wouldn't go this route. But I knew that if you have like a small company, you need to have like an advantage of some sort. And me having a PhD, when my company works in a field I have the expertise in, actually is an advantage. So to me, that was like a competitive thing, not necessarily in the corporate, but rather on like small business scale. You have like 3 or 4 companies doing similar job, and I'm the guy with a PhD. It gives me the edge to get the most difficult work. And in my experience, those kind of jobs usually pay better, give you like a certain authority in a space, and so on. So while I started thinking that, I'll do a PhD to be a lecturer, sooner or later, most people realize that it's not as glorious as you would assume. It's the competitive edge that actually, that's what remained, let's say. Because it's funny, because you do PhD for something, and then after a few years, you realize that actually what remains is something different. It's not less valuable. You just wouldn't think about it up front. And that's interesting. But I mean, like that, the best part of this conversation surely comes now, because I think that people don't realize how tough it is to make a PhD. And I think that it would only be fair, after talking like why you want to have it, and all this glorious competitive edge that you can like imagine, having the titles and the glory and scientific articles quoted 7 times, like yeah, like it's probably only funny with you if you're actually doing a PhD.
But I can relate to that.
but yeah, like let's talk about, did you enjoy doing a PhD? Like, was it hard? Was it fun? Like,
well, I think there are different phases when doing a PhD, and certainly there are phases where you think of yourself as highly effective, and you have a high meaning of what you're doing, and you're really content with what you're doing, and it's a pleasure to work. So those phases exist. They usually are in the later beginnings, where you climbing Mount Stupidity.
There's a week.
Right? Where you think you have all the knowledge and you'll be finished in 2 years and stuff
Dunning
like that.
Kruger, I love it.
Yes. But there are phases which are as tough as anything I have lived up to today. So there are phases where you will want to quit. And I think this is maybe the main important difference between guys and girls finishing a PhD and those which ultimately just don't follow those PhDs anymore, which is not ultimately a bad thing. Or I'm not saying they're weak or something like that. No, there are reasons for all, and also there's a good amount of reason to just give up on a PhD because it's not worth it anymore. But the thing that which separates those two groups is that all the ones who finished with the PhD, they proved that they can bite into a subject deep enough and for a long enough period of time where it will hurt. There will be tears and blood and sweat and pain and all. But you did go on and continued to work on that against all obstacles.
Yeah, I can easily relate to that. Yeah.
I think that's the main. That's what kept with me. When I think back of the days when I was doing the PhD, those are really some harsh and absolutely great memories at the same time. And yeah, so a little bit remarkable.
I mean, it's dark, but actually doing a PhD is a rather dark experience. Like, to me, it was funny because for whatever reason, I was like, we're organized enough to start my first company and a PhD within 2 months of each other.
Wow.
So if I can give you any advice at all, I beg you, do not start a company and a PhD at the same time. This sucks. Like, you don't want that at all. Like, I've been doing like 12 hours of work at my company to go back at night and do 4 hours of PhD each day for like few years. Right? That's not cool.
Yeah.
So there were months when I haven't spoken with my wife because she fell asleep before I got back and she woke up after I left. Like, that's not funny. Right?
Yes.
So without a doubt, the amount of work you need to put in to do a PhD is crazy. But, you know, amount of work, like to someone who's like workaholic as I am, which is not like, I definitely don't recommend that either. Amount of work is not a big problem. Like, you just imagine this huge pile of work and you'll just like, you know, dig in and do it. The problem with PhD is usually that it's work involving trial and error. So you do part of it, you realize that it sucks, and you have to like start over doing something else. And it, like, if you would have to do like 100 things of something and you just do 30, you see progress. And in PhD, you do 20, you realize that it's the wrong direction, so you have to ditch it and start from zero again. It's like over and over again. So there is like a certain cycle of frustration. And like I often said that the people who do PhD are not necessarily the smartest, but they are definitely those who are most resilient. Like, and it's like resilience for many, like in many different areas. One of this, as you like so rightfully mentioned, is not giving up. Like, you just have to know, okay, that was the 4th attempt, it failed, let's do the 5th one, right? And then the 6th one, the 100th one. I actually learned to do nonlinear FEA by clicking around Abacus randomly. I had no idea how it works, so I just took several months of my life and just click everything and note what it did. So, you know, there's like a lot of things you have to do, and most of it you have to do on your own. So
that's right, yeah.
That would be difficult in doing a PhD. But also, I don't know if like you'll agree, but I think that it's better now than when I was doing a PhD for like at least a portion of it. Like some of the professors were really tough. Like they weren't like the nicest people to be around. Like my thesis tutor is an angel. Like he's such a wonderful guy. Like I owe him a lot. But some other guys, like I remember once I wrote a single prestigious scientific article, like one in my life. It was 35 points at the time because, you know, if you write a scientific article, you get points and then you get like a treat. But it was like one. And one of the professors comes to me like publicly, like, you know, there is a corridor full of people. He comes to me and is like, congratulations on the article. That was very good. But what do you teach those students? Like I had exam, they know nothing. It's your fault. And he started yelling at me publicly. And you stand there and it's like, whoa. And that's like, I didn't sign up for that. Like I'm supposed to be a scientist, right? So I don't know if those things happen like everywhere, but there is a portion of it that might be tough.
Well, being yelled at, I cannot think of an instance where this happened. Maybe a little bit.
I'm actually disappointed.
Yeah, that's the youth, the new generation. That's totally weak, and it's not so hard anymore. No, I don't. I think you can have luck and you can have the opposite. So
yeah.
It depends on which people you end up with. But what I certainly can say that, and maybe I'll relate to Einstein a little bit. You know, he did this famous quote, there's two things which are endless, the universe and the stupidity of humans. And I'm certain about the later one. that's Einstein. And I would add to that also what can be unlimited is the ego of professors.
Oh, yeah.
My God. They are hurt by so little things and so dramatically. In their world, that's all makes sense. But if you're doing your PhD and you're coming fresh from university and you have to apply to the standards, this can be frustrating at times. And to a point where, it was pretty tough for me.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know if you agree, actually, but I would say that doing a PhD is like working in a corporation that asks you to do things over and over again. And managers are the people who are most effective at doing things over and over again.
Well, yeah, that's a point to it, yeah.
So like the selection of people on the top, like you normally in a big normal corporation, you would like managers to be those, you know, soft, kind people who care for the team and like lift the spirit to like make them cooperate and do great things. In science, there is only like one chart. Are you like better scientist or worse scientist? Like how many books have you written? Like there's only one. So you can become a boss of everybody, like simply by the virtue that you write books the fastest, right? And you have like 20 published books and stuff like that, right? So this does not necessarily be the best measure of being a good boss. And I think that you can have like wonderful people, and truth be told, most of the people I've met in academia were like wonderful, great. I'm friends with them to this day. It's like great guys and girls. But some of the people who usually write books the fastest tend to be like difficult, so they can like really make things hard for you. And like I think that you would have to do PhD just after university, because I have a
Yes.
theory that if you would go to work in a normal workplace for like 5 years and then you will go back to university to do a PhD, like you would last a week. Because mostly why I survived it was that I thought that it was normal. Like you just don't like you just assume that every place is like that, right?
Yes.
And then
yeah.
if you actually have the knowledge that it can be better, it's like this much harder to comply with all of that.
I think the scale extends both ways. So it also can be worse in industry. But yeah, I think if you're fresh from university, then you don't have a set mindset to it. And you will accept way more, which you will never accept if you're having worked in a good corporate environment. Because I don't know if you agree, but PhDs are like, and this is a hard one, but a little bit. Don't take me fully on that statement, but those are like more than slaves, because you pay them very little, and you can make them do anything, because they are asking for guidance. For sure, if you know what you're doing and if you know everything, then this may not apply to you. But I think the majority of PhDs, they are also struggling, as you told us.
Yes.
It was search. You're at the barriers of knowledge, right? You want to create new knowledge by experimenting new ways, new paths, and you're looking for guidance. You're looking for some person which has more experience in that field. And yeah, if you end up with someone bad on that end, it can really be frustrating. So
I have a story that will make your skin curl.
Right.
Yeah, like about how like how bad it can get. At some point GDPR was introduced. Maybe it was pre-GDPR, but suddenly I remember the times when the like personal information of students was not such a big issue, and suddenly everybody, and I don't mean in academia, but like literally in like everywhere, become very obsessed with personal information. And someone in our department, or maybe government, I have no idea who made the call, decided that if a student did a project, each page of this project is like as if you are a writer writing a book, basically. So it's like his work. So it has to be destroyed rather than thrown away, in risk that someone will recover it and maybe gain some personal information, stuff like that, right? So basically the idea was that we have to burn it all. It's like a lot of paper, like it's both sides written, not much you can do about it. We have to burn. You know where this is going, right? So of course our university hired a company that burned the documents, but the company said, yeah, we burn paper, sure, but you have to remove all the plastic and metal things because it will like damage our furnace. And our boss one day came to us and say, look, guys, we have 2 square cubic meters of documents, and you need to put the plastic things out on one pile, metal thingies to the basket, and paper to the... And I actually have photographs of current professors, doctors and associate professors, knee-deep in documents, tearing them apart. It took us the whole day. We found old PhDs of each other. It was super fun because, you would be surprised how much funky documents you can store in university closets everywhere, right? And so we had fun. It was not dreadful or anything, but if you think about how absurd this is, actually using scientists to that was the cheapest way, because everybody else at university have well defined what is within what you are hired to do. So the people who do technical things in the building say, no, look, this is the list of my responsibilities in the work. It's not there. I'm not doing that, right? And suddenly scientists are the best people to do this kind of job. So yeah, I don't know how it looks now, but there are stories.
Yeah, perfectly normal. The thing you get hired as the elite of the world,
it's
right?
Perfectly normal. And you just like at that point, I think I already had my PhD, because like I worked there like quite a while longer. So you kind of start to look at it differently. But if I was just starting a PhD and a professor came and said like, go do it, I would say like, yeah, that's what PhD is. Like it wouldn't even occur to me that this may not be like reasonable in any way. So
Yes.
so it's not only science that is difficult
you have
in a
to
PhD,
develop also
actually.
this sense of what is okay, and where you also have to step up and tell maybe that's not the best idea. But as a PhD student, which you are desperately dependent on the university giving you the PhD, because you are here for that. You are sacrificing your lifetime and money for it, and well, you cannot do anything which harms that, and that's this dependency, which is so bad, or can be so bad, because the university, and I mean certain professors, can let you do anything because you're dependent. So, and that's the thing I meant with the modern slavery. Yeah, it's not slavery related to the old times, but
I must say that I was blessed, because, as I said, my thesis tutor, he's a great guy. He really helped me a lot, and to the point that when he asked us to do something, he actually paid us to do it. Like he hired us to do like scientific things, and he paid us. Like we couldn't believe that. Like, it wasn't normal, That's the point, right? He never said something like, "I had like 300 exams to grade." Like here, he actually
do
like,
it.
he said, "No, it's my job. I will do it." Right, and I would happily do it for him actually, but he never asked me. Like he had like a very big moral code of some sort that simply meant that he treated us as humans, and that was so cool, because like some friends like didn't have as easy as I did. So definitely, it's not a norm. Yeah. So I guess that the good advice is, if you're going to do a PhD, don't think about the topic, learn about the person that's going to be your tutor. Like that would be a sound advice. Like get to know this person. Like if you like him or her, if the cooperation will look nice, that would be a smart move. Because like if I would like end up with like a egotistic professor who would like slap me around everywhere, I have a rather heavy character. I'm not like, I still was yelled at corridors by other people, but I could kind of like, I was on the verge, right? And there is a chance that I wouldn't finish my PhD if that was the case. So
yeah, I think for me this was the same. I had luck with it's a bit tricky with me, because in Germany you have this difference between universities and University of Applied Sciences. So this is a different kind of university, one which is more practical, has more laboratories.
So it would be like Polytechnic in this case? Yeah, the University of Technology?
Maybe, yeah. But
so we have that as well.
The thing is that our applied universities of applied sciences, they are not allowed to do PhDs. So you have to go to university. If you studied at a University of Applied Science, you're in a bad luck situation, because you are considered minor from the universities. Not so theoretically skilled and stuff like that. It's a really problem, because I had my my job, my the paying thing, right? My projects, they were located at a University of Applied Sciences, the one where I studied also. And for the PhD, I had to find a first supervisor. And I found one, and we met and we spoke, and over all the years it was good. The cooperation with him was good. He was always giving me input if I needed that, but he kept quietly at the sideline, you could say. But the thing where I got lucky was my third supervisor, because second supervisor we come to in a bit, but my third supervisor was directly at the University of Applied Science, and this guy was absolutely a genius. And I really I'm thankful much to him because he guided me through there quite nicely. So I had a lot of conversations with him and a lot of tips which helped me, and he always treated us very well. So, but I can totally relate that you have to choose your supervisors with good care.
It's funny that you have more than one, because here in Poland you have like one thesis supervisor. There's only a single
we
person.
have two. Two is mandatory, and the third one, I call it the third one, but he wasn't. Obviously, he's not standing in the documents, but he was doing the real job at the front, right?
But it also has to, like, on the similar note, I think that what you find also cool actually about doing PhD is that while many people in universities are like bored accountants, they just go there, do their work, go home. It's like a big office tower of science in some sense. There are passionate people.
Yes,
I won't say that they are in majority, but there are a bit there, right? And if you happen to do something that one of those passionate people is also interested in, the amount of support they can give you for pure joy of discussing this with someone else is insane.
It's insane.
Like, whatever you think, like, you could say something like, oh, I will go to NASA, work in their like headquarters, and they will teach me stuff. Like, I'm not, like, of course, in NASA, you most likely have a lot of passionate people too, so maybe that was not the best idea. But like, you know, like a typical office, let's say, like civil engineering office, right? The amount of knowledge you can get from one guy who's just hyped about what you're doing, and he was doing it like few years more, is crazy. Like, it's just incredible how much you can learn. So while those people usually aren't high up in hierarchy because they are just starting and things like that, they can tremendously help you. And that's the benefit. There are really cool discussions going on. You just get a hang of it. For
sure. I can relate to that perfectly. We had also a few professors at our university, and I can remember a lot of crazy discussions we had, but they were so good and also helpful for the PhD, and also not quite only just for your expertise and stuff like that, but also on a level, on the meta level, on a level above, how to approach it, how to tackle the stress, how to coordinate stuff and something like that. So this is also very helpful.
Well, I would also say that, you know, at that point I was young, having my own company, so the amount of advice for all their colleagues that could guide me, like, not even totally not related to my PhD research at all. Like, I would come to like the next door office at the beginning and say, like, look guys, I'm doing this project and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. And somebody would say, like, okay, show it to me, like, let's have a look, right? And they will like honestly tell you what they think. And like, obviously, like, whatever you talk about people at university, those are very smart people. Like, you would be very hard pressed to be an idiot and survive. It would require really like strong character and decent like skills to navigate this, right?
Well, they exist as well, but
yes, of course, like there are very skillful people there. You would be surprised. but like on average, you can assume that someone in university is most likely smart, and like a lot of dedicated people helped me along the way. So I think that we just jump to benefits, right? Because like we said, why would you do a PhD? And that making it is actually harder than it seems, not only because of science. Let me ask you one last question, because I'm curious, actually. Would you say that a PhD is like difficult as much as mathematics you do in a course, in a sheer like IQ test difficulty level? Or is it not as much difficult?
Well, it has this aspect, but it is not it. So you have to have a certain level of intelligence to solve problems. But doing a PhD is more characterized of actually your passion to go and follow through it, also with the pain, but you still go through it, and you don't ever give up. It's more that than you have to be Einstein to become a PhD. That's not the case.
I was curious if you would agree with me, because I'm of very similar opinion that of course you have to be like smart, maybe above averagely smart, but like I definitely as a student had math exams that were more difficult than my PhD thesis. It was just more complex computationally in a sense, PhD is mostly repetitive, and you kind of like, even if you don't understand everything at the start, at the 30th iteration, you kind of understand it, right? So it's not the pure IQ intellect level thing. And I was curious about that. Okay, but
can
back to
trade
the
in
main
time for difficulty.
Yeah, that's true. Like resilience, the time under pressure with irritating repetitive work.
Yes.
That it's like folding letters, but with one hand. So
it's a good picture.
Like, what would you say about benefits? Like, we already said that doing a PhD is surprisingly hard, not necessarily in a way people think. Like, funny enough, right?
Yeah, that surprises you.
Would you agree also that benefits of having a PhD are somewhat not what people would think about?
The thing is, different people understand different benefits of the PhD. So if you think that you have, after PhD, everyone will just listen to you except what you're saying just because you have a PhD, especially for small companies, that's rubbish. That's complete bullshit. Yeah, sorry about the word, but you're the same person.
I'm serious.
Yeah, you're the same person after and before. You're doing mistakes, and you have to be aware of it. You don't. That's maybe one hard lesson I learned. It's a bit stupid, but you're doing your PhD, and you think of this PhD because you don't have it as this idealistic, pure thing which has no flaw, and having those. And you regard those with a PhD as some of half gods because they have it, right? And you want it, and you don't have it, and you try to achieve what they already achieved. So you look up to them, and once you have this PhD achieved, you think about it completely differently because you see yourself, you have your flaws, and you have a PhD, so the PhD cannot be worth that much. So it's turning.
Yes.
It's a shift in perspective, but coming back to the benefits, there's certainly benefits, but it's not the way you imagine it. So maybe you get your doctor's appointment faster if you have, at least in Germany, if you say you're a doctor.
Seriously?
Yes, that works.
We don't get that. That's so lame.
Well, I don't know what it is, but in Germany you have this for the insurance. You have, it's not insurance, where you pay your healthcare, right? For your healthcare, you have two systems: one which is done by the state and one which is private. And this also makes it more complicated. But if you're telling the lady or the guy making the appointment that you're a doctor, maybe he thinks or she thinks that's you're a colleague, right? That could be something.
Okay.
But my professor taught me that he wanted to get an appointment at a doctor's fast, and he told the lady at the desk that he's a doctor, and he got the appointment, I think, the same or next day.
Oh, man. Like, right? I actually, sorry to cut in like that, but I know a person who was woke up like in a 3 a.m. in the night by desperate bang on the door. So they open the door, and there's a lady with a child crying. And he's like, what the fuck? And she's like, you're a doctor, help me. And she's like, yeah, but IT.
There's so many jokes about that. I can tell another one right after the story. So he got there, got his appointment, and then he got to the doctor, and the first question the doctor poses to him is, are you a colleague? Because he thought maybe he wanted to test him or something like that. And, then he had to reveal.
So, like, if I would have to name one benefit PhD gave me, I would go with the fact that I had to teach at university was a blessing. And it comes in many disguises. Like I was sent to a different city to do lectures in like off-place lecture hall of our university, which meant that I have to wake up at 5 a.m., go there and get back. As it was sold to me, said, Łukasz, you're very young. It's an honor that you can run your own lecture at this age, and somebody has to do it. So, like HR stuff at university is great. But teaching at university was like one of the best things that happened to me, because like funny enough, I don't know if it works the same in Germany, but nobody asks you if you know how to teach it. Nobody even checks if you know what you are going to teach. They just throw you in a classroom with random assortment of people and say, the topic of today's class is yada yada. And you're like, oh, great. So the first 2 years, I really feel for the people I taught for the first time, because like I can easily recall many places where during teaching someone, I myself understood something for the first time. Yeah. And you have those aha moments of you talk about something for the 5th time and suddenly
it clicks.
And till you die, you know the answer. And I think that there are certain things I understand that I would never understood if not for the fact that someone just pushed me on the stage in front of people and say, explain it to them. And I was like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And I was like, don't worry, just talk. It will come, right? Maybe after 3 years. So shame of the people you teach first. But it does come. And mm-hmm. I've learned a lot. I cannot say that anybody taught me that. It just kind of happened that you kind of like, I can't even say that I studied more and more of the subject that I was teaching. It was just like, you just get it at some point. It hits you. And so many revelations come to me of how things really work. Because mostly when you try to explain something difficult, you're like on the edge of what you understand yourself. And you're trying to make a stupid example to explain what you think is true. And suddenly you realize, hey, this example actually works. Like all the stupid stories I talk about on my blog are actually something like randomly generated, standing in front of people talking, right? So that's the biggest benefit of PhD. It's not the title, it's how much it taught me by forcing me to teach others. And like, I think that would be the main benefit. Well, let's hope it's not the only one. So do you have any more?
No, for sure not. But yeah, it's definitely one big benefit. For us in Germany, it's a little bit different. We can prepare ourselves for the lecture. We don't get thrown for class and have to talk.
Well, of course, like yeah, like you get like a week in advance.
Okay, all right, okay, so it's the same. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's the same here too. And I also did that, I think, a little bit earlier than doing with the PhD. And I also think it's quite beneficial also for you as a lecturer, because as of the things you mentioned, it is that you understand by teaching. And this is a big topic, because I think it works like this. Don't call me out on that, but you have your consciousness and your subconsciousness, and by teaching over the same stuff over and over again, you're feeding in your unconsciousness parts of information, and the unconsciousness tries to make sense out of it, and that's where understanding happens. So by feeding over and over again with your consciousness, you will ultimately become better at understanding that.
I would need a PhD in like brain science to comment on that.
Well, don't call me out of that, but I read something about that, and that was what struck with me.
Oh, yeah. There's another benefit of having a PhD. If they're making a commercial about a shampoo, I honestly am a doctor. And I can say something like, this is a great shampoo. And it will say, Dr. Łukasz says that it's okay.
They did it really, right? They did it.
Yeah, really this really happened. This really happened. To the point that I think that we actually have a law now that if you're advertising something that is like, that you can use only your PhD to advertise things that are related to the subject of your PhD or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, but which makes total sense, right?
It does. Because funny enough, like having a PhD in something doesn't make you any smarter in anything else. It actually meant that at some point you focus on the top subject of your PhD, which means that you didn't focus on everything else. So on average, many people know more on other things, like
That's right.
by accident, basically.
Yeah, because you're also specializing so much in one topic, there's not much room for anything else.
Yeah.
But on the contrary, there is this notion, I don't know of which Greek philosopher, that by
we're
looking
Greek
into-
philosophers, PhDs.
Yeah. Yes. He said that the wise man has knowledge above all things because all principles are the same in all stuff. So by looking into one thing, you can transfer this knowledge to another area. I would have to think about a more specific example where this is true in engineering, but
yeah, I definitely hope my surgeon doesn't have like a ballet PhD or something, wishing to transfer this. But
yes,
but yeah, I know what you mean.
On the metaverse.
There is a level in engineering that actually works great, and that is if you really deeply understand one thing, you actually had to understand a lot of principles to like get the understanding, and those principles are everywhere, which means that I may not know like something in a given field, but I already have a lot of building blocks, and I don't need a lot to build a tower out of that, right? Because in essence, like it's the same thing but different, right? So you have like a place where you can get there. So yeah, that would definitely be something.
When you're trying to understand how pressure works, like for a cylinders or something like that, you will get the notion of better understanding how clouds form or weather progresses and those kind of things happening, because it's the same thing, but on a different scale. And that's something, which you can do, this transformation of information.
Like, apart from you learning stuff on PhD and getting better, I think that there are always like practical benefits of having a PhD, and definitely we already touched on some, like a career in Porsche, if you're after that,
for example,
and having like your own company with a competitive edge, right?
Yes,
because I think that I don't know, maybe you don't agree, because it's a philosophical thing. I did a PhD out of like I consider it noble in some sense, like doing science, being a lecturer in some sense. It appeared to me to be noble, and like it was worth on its own something because it was noble. Like I didn't seek practical reasons to do a PhD. I just wanted to have a PhD because it was the right thing to do in some sense. But nowadays, I look at PhD thinking that if I knew back then what I knew now, I would still do it, but for very different reasons. And I think that practically looking at life makes a lot of sense, like especially in engineering, this is kind of what we do, right? So while learning and understanding a lot of things sounds beautifully, I think that like those hard life things that can help you with doing a PhD actually matter most. And those are the things that's all like PhD is a very surprising thing because I haven't thought about those things, but like I think that there are some benefits of having a PhD that are extremely practical and not maybe like you can straight calculate it into money in any reasonable extent, but they are there. So like in your field, do you have like anything in mind?
Well, it's basically what the concept here is that you trade in time for X. And you're doing a PhD means you're trading time for all the benefits you get with a PhD. Those may be practical, but also what comes to my mind is that it shapes and forms your character. I think this cannot be stated highly enough because you as doing the PhD will not be aware of the changes which it makes on you because they are so fine. They're so incremental. You don't get to really see them. But I think the reasons why someone hires a PhD today, apart from the status and all that kind of thing, is because those have a certain resilience, right? And this is what actually is what you are doing to yourself, to your own character, by living through this period and going this road. So it's trading time for this, and this means having more resilience, having a it's hard to put it into words, because it still has to play out for me, because I have my PhD now for a year, right? So I cannot really estimate what all changes are, which this path will grow on me. But it's certainly more resilience, but it's also more a better way to just cope with stress or pressure, because you're having experienced for a longer period of time insane or immensely amount of stress, and you worked through that, and you have this confidence now that whatever will hit you in life, you can dig through it. And I think this is maybe one of the most beneficial things I had taken from the PhD.
That's so curious that you mention it. Like, I now that I think of it, there is something to it, but I'm not sure if I would like phrase it this way. By this, I mean I'm not sure if I would come up with it on, but I do agree with you that that's definitely something there. Like, to me, PhD gives you a teaching experience that's so rare, because let's face it, you learn how to teach others with trial and error, and PhD gives you just a lot of trials.
That's right, yeah.
And you kind of like find your own way, find your own like style of teaching. And it's not like they teach you how to teach. You have it in you. You just need 100 lessons to deliver, to discover that you have a style. Like, at the beginning, everybody's awkward in the same way, but then the roads like split, and you have those people who you enjoy, those people who you don't enjoy. Everybody like different teachers for different reasons, and so on, right? You have your style, and you can like polish it with a PhD, because you just do it a lot. And like, part of my career is training. And if I would start corporate training by doing corporate training, that would be a freaking nightmare. Like, I think that the first semester of my 10 years in academia career, I did more hours of teaching than, maybe not in, maybe like first year and a half, more hours of teaching than all the trainings combined. So the experience I've got to deliver knowledge that I possess to benefit the people that listen to me is very valuable, because I'm a good teacher, not because like I'm great at it. I just had a lot of tries. Like, I spent like a lot of time teaching this, right? And it would be very hard to get this experience in doing training from the get-go. You just don't get those many gigs to deliver that. So I think that's whatever we have a PhD in, assuming that it's useful to people and they are willing to pay to learn it, you are actually very well equipped to teach it. Like, you know, this is what we do. Like, look, we instantly defaulted to, okay, let's do some online stuff, right? You have your beautiful YouTube channel. I do my blog. Like, everybody has something, right? You instantly know I can teach others. They will benefit from it. Let's go, right?
Yes.
And PhD actually gives you that edge in this. So I think that's nice. And when it comes to stress that you've mentioned, that's interesting. I would like rotate it a bit, because PhD pushes you to go to scientific conferences. And I actually had someone laugh out loud at me during my live presentation in front of 100 people.
Wow.
This teaches you a lot about yourself. And like, and quite honestly, that was a very bad paper. We were fifth-year students, and we measured the temperature by putting our hand closer and closer to the object, and we measured how far we could, because we didn't have any device to measure this hot temperature. It was like, actually, like, this was justified. Don't get me wrong, right? But, you know, you're one young guy, stressed as hell, and the guy in front row, like, laugh out loud at you. And you're like, You're there, deal with it, man. Like, suck it up. Like, you cannot cry in front of those people, right? You have to do something, and you kind of learn to manage it. And after like 10 years of this, I was actually comfortable to like stand up for myself. If someone stand up during my presentation and said, this is bullshit, I was like, no, it's only your opinion. Like, could you prove it somehow? Because we can talk, like we can do that, this right here, right now. I don't care about it. Let's go. Like, you want it? Come. Right? Yeah. And people try. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But like, it's like when you have this experience, it's not like someone goes to you and says, boo, and you're like, woo. And it doesn't work like that anymore. You have this confidence.
Stand your ground.
Yeah, you stand your ground for sure. But also you realize that most of the attacks are just flushes. Like, it's like mark punches that no weight goes after them. It's just like, you know, me speaking big words because I'm so big, and you're like, okay, I'm checking you, guy. And everyone's like, no, like you know. So it gives you a very valuable business experience to this extent. It's very easy to negotiate things. Like, you're assertive. You actually ask for proof if someone claims something. Because you know that you can claim anything as long as you can't prove it, it doesn't exist, right? So there are those cool things that PhD gives you that are not necessarily like scientific, but they are definitely helping you in life. Also, it teaches you to question authority. Like, you know, if some random PhD of like whatever discipline goes to television to talk about stuff, I'm like, yeah, I know a lot of PhDs too, though. Like, come on, like, that's interesting. Like, can you, like, do you have a peer review paper in a like well-respected source that actually proves what you're saying? Because for now, it's like a nice talk. Like, I give you that. And plus, public speaking is also like a nice thing. You actually, if you would push me on a stage, randomly wake up me in the night, dress me up, someone push me on a stage and say, you have 2 hours to talk about nonlinear FEA, go. And you know, light the lights, and there's like 10,000 people there. I'm like, okay, do you have a mic? you just go, right?
You're used to it,
You're used to it, yeah, exactly. Like, I remember first classes I had as a teacher, I was scared out of my mind. Like, I was border like crying, staying there, and I'm like, what am I doing? I have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, you have a few pages of notes. It all doesn't make sense now when you read it as you have to deliver it. It's crazy. But after a while, you just like,
it's a struggle, and you adapt to it. And I think this is the benefit of the effects which happen as soon as you're adapting to this. This is what is the benefit to your character,
And also, at the end, I think that knowledge from my PhD helps surprisingly little. Because funny enough, if you go into the industry, very rarely you will encounter problems so deep that they reach to a level where you need a PhD of a subject. Like, I mean,
that's right.
How many rocket engines are designed from scratch every decade? 1, 2, I don't know, right? So if you think about it, everybody does everything as it was always done. You don't have to fix it. You just have to do it, right? Maybe you understand a bit more. But actually, rarely problems are so deep that they would require so much knowledge. Like, if I would work in a big company, I'm absolutely certain that most of my days, I wouldn't even go near the expertise that I have. I'm lucky I have a company that specializes in solving problems that I have a PhD in. So I'm kind of like constantly within what I've learned. But I feel blessed because it's not normal. Like,
it's usually to the rule,
you usually know a lot about one thing to use your general knowledge of everything else in your work, basically. Right? So the knowledge itself, isn't as important in a field you're doing a PhD, but you gain a beautiful skill set to solve difficult problems as you do your PhD. For me, that was nonlinear FEA. Like, I'm using nonlinear FEA every day. I cannot tell you honestly that I did a PhD from nonlinear FEA. I have a PhD from shell stability. I just used nonlinear FEA. So what PhD did, it forced me to learn it, validate it, and test it. And it was rigorously checked by others, mostly by humiliating me in public. But at the end, I'm dead on. I know that I know how to do it. I know I can solve it. So this skill of solving a problem is so much more valuable to me than the problem that I actually solved. My PhD ended with an equation I never used, and I don't intend to. Like if you happen to have my PhD, don't use it.
Yeah, that's right. That's beautiful put. The skill set you acquire by going through that process of solving a difficult question, this is what leaves the mark on you, which stays. Yeah. That's beautiful, yeah.
And I think that's the biggest benefit. After all those people yell at you and you defend yourself in public and you do public speaking, that's all great. But the ability to solve difficult problems mean that every time you see a difficult technical problem, you have no idea how to solve. You look it in the face and say, yeah, we'll do that. Like, I need a month. Right? And you just like, sure, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, far from it, but like, you don't get intimidated easily because like, you know how to solve stuff, even if you don't know what this stuff is, you just solve it. So that's, and if you would ask me when I was starting, it wouldn't even get to my top 100 list of what I will get from a PhD. You just get it from hindsight, I think.
Yes.
That you realize that the knowledge in a field is more or less useless most of the time, but the skill set you gain along the way is priceless. So they should like give you a PhD, not for the topic, but for the ability to finish it.
Yeah, I think so. That's really a point. Yeah.
So, I guess that I will try to do a summary. Let me know if you like it. If you want to do a PhD in engineering, first of all, I think that we both agree it's worth it, but not in a way you think. It's worth it for other reasons. If you want to really approach it, don't think about a subject. Pick a person who will be your tutor. It must be a nice guy or girl who will help you out. Because the help of this person is the most important asset you will get. And try to do a PhD in a university where at least one low-level employee is passionate about the subject you'll do your PhD in, and you're set. Like that's all that needs. Then go to as many conferences as you can because you'll be yelled at. Sometimes, not always, but like there will be people who will really need to prove you something publicly. They are always like, there's 100 people in the crowd. All you need is one. But that's good for you. And it's scary as hell, but it will develop you as a person and teach as many classes as you can, just so you can learn what you're teaching. And it comes later, not after the first one. And then PhD gives you a lot of benefits. And while, of course, having fame and scientific degree gives you most of it comes with your skill set of solving problems that you can either use in big corporate world to climb on the ladder, which is great, or you can do small business as I do and try to focus on what you know and treat it as a competitive edge. Whichever route you go, it will benefit you. And if everything fails, you can always be an academic teacher.
Beautiful ending here. No, I totally agree.
It just came to me that, I don't know if you noticed, we started with saying that I wanted to be an academic teacher. After 10 years in the university, I quit. I didn't even mention it. It's not even on the radar now. So I figured that I will add this one just for giggles. And to be fair, many people that I know teach at university, even though they have huge successful companies, they earn a lot of money, and they just got used to going to university, meeting the people and having fun. And those people often have a lot to say. So I'm not like lightly poking fun at everybody who works at university. I'm not an idiot. I worked at university as well. There are many, many smart people. But truth be told, there are also people who, just are just like scientific accountants going to university, teaching what they have to teach and go home, right? So it depends, but it is a safe career choice at some point. If you reach a certain level in science, you can just sit there and be a teacher, basically. It's like high school, but for older people.
Yeah, you can do that, for sure.
All right, so Manuel, it was such a pleasure to have you here,
Same thing
and
for me.
I really do
Always
hope that
fun.
we'll do more of those. It's
Yeah,
fun,
it's always good to
and
talk to you.
yeah, if you, dear viewer and listener, like what we did here, let us know in a comment. Let us know what you think, and whether we managed to encourage you or discourage you from making a PhD. Because, to be fair, I'm not absolutely certain if this was like encouraging or discouraging video, but
Well, yeah.
at least we were honest, and we really told you what we think about it. So, maybe it's a decent point. And if you happen to live in a very different part of the world, and in your place the situation is gravely different, please let us know in the comments as well, because obviously our experience comes from we live like what, 500 kilometers from one another in Europe. So like, clearly, even though different countries, we clearly have similarities, right? And world is a big place, so this can look very different in other places. So if you have any experience in that, let us know as well. And thank you for watching. It was fun, and I hope you enjoyed it.